My stepson threw me out the night of the funeral. Pack your bags, Margaret. You're done living off my father's money, he hissed, standing in the doorway of what he thought was now his mansion. But Brandon didn't. No, I'd spent 3 months meeting with the best estate attorney in Connecticut, and when those 2 police officers showed up at 9 a.m. the next morning with that restraining order in their hands, watching his face go from smug to terrified, that was worth every sleepless night I'd spent planning. Let me tell you how a 62-year-old widow outsmarted an entire family of vultures who thought I was just some naive woman who got lucky. Spoiler alert, I wasn't lucky. I was prepared. My name is Margaret Hayes, and until 6 weeks ago, I was married to Robert Hayes for 14 beautiful years. 14 years that his adult children, Brandon, and Melissa, 35, spent convinced I was a gold digger who'd manipulated their poor, lonely father into marriage. Never mind that I had my own successful career as a hospital administrator when Robert and I met at a charity gala in 2010. Never mind that I'd insisted on a prenup to protect both of us. Never mind that I'd helped Robert rebuild his relationship with those same ungrateful children after his first wife left him for her tennis instructor. None of that mattered to them. To Brandon and Melissa, I would always be the replacement. Robert died of a massive heart attack on a Tuesday morning in September. We were having coffee on our back patio, the one overlooking the garden. I'd spent 3 years cultivating when he just collapsed. One moment. We were laughing about something silly our neighbor's cat had done. The next moment, I was screaming for help while performing CPR I'd learned decades ago in nursing school. He was gone before the ambulance arrived. I remember sitting in that hospital hallway, my coffee-stained nightgown still on, mascara running down my face when Brandon showed up. Not to comfort me, not to cry with me. He walked right past me like I was invisible and started making phone calls about securing Dad's affairs. That should have been my first warning. The funeral was on a Friday. Beautiful service. Robert would have loved it. Simple, dignified, full of people who genuinely cared about him. I gave the eulogy, talked about how he taught me to sail, how he danced with me in the kitchen every Sunday morning, how he'd leave little notes in my lunch bag even though we worked in different cities. Brandon's jaw was clenched through the entire speech. Melissa didn't cry once. She just kept checking her phone. After the reception, which I'd organized and paid for, by the way, everyone went home. Our house in Fairfield had been full of people, casseroles, flowers, and that particular kind of hushed sympathy that fills a space after someone dies. By 8 p.m., it was just me, Brandon, Melissa, and Brandon's wife, Jennifer. I was exhausted. Grief exhausted. The kind of tired that makes your bones hurt. I was in the kitchen, wrapping up leftover food, when Brandon walked in. "We need to talk," he said. Not, "How are you holding up?" Not, "Is there anything you need?" Just, "We need to talk." I set down the aluminum foil. "Okay." He leaned against the counter, my counter, in the kitchen I'd renovated with my own money 2 years ago, and crossed his arms. "Jennifer and I are moving in," he announced. "This weekend," I blinked. "What?" "The house. We're moving in. It's too much space for you alone, and frankly, Dad would want family to be here." He said it like he was doing me a favor. "You can stay in the guest house out back. We'll convert it for you." The guest house. The 400-square-foot pool house that didn't even have a real kitchen. "Brandon," I said slowly, "this is my home." "It's the family home," Melissa chimed in, appearing in the doorway like she'd been waiting for her cue. "Dad built this house. You've only been here, what, 10 years? 14, I corrected. And I've paid for half the… whatever. Brandon waved his hand dismissively. Point is, we're family. Blood family. And we're moving in. You should be grateful we're even letting you stay in the guest house. Letting me stay. In my own house. I looked at Jennifer, hoping for some female solidarity, some recognition of how insane this was. She just examined her manicure. No, I said quietly. Brandon's eyes narrowed. What did you say? I said no. This is my house. You're not moving in. My voice was steadier than I felt. That's when his mask dropped completely. Listen, Margaret. He stepped closer, using his height to intimidate me. I don't know what fantasy world you've been living in, but Dad's gone now. Which means the free ride is over. You're not our mother. You're not family. You were just a companion for Dad's last few years, and now that he's gone, there's no reason for you to be here. Brandon, I started. I'm not done. His voice was cold. You have until Sunday to move your personal items to the guest house. Jennifer is already planning renovations for the master bedroom. Your little garden project out back? That's coming out. Jennifer wants a yoga deck. Something crystallized in that moment. Not anger, not yet. Something colder. More calculating. Get out of my house, I said quietly. Brandon laughed. Actually laughed. Your house? You think this is your house? Dad left everything to us in the will. Everything. You get a small monthly allowance, probably more than you deserve. But the house, the cars, the investment portfolio, that all comes to me and Melissa. That's not true, I said. Yes, it is. I've already talked to Dad's lawyer. Well, his lawyer, not that ambulance chaser you probably have on speed dial. He pulled out his phone and showed me what looked like a legal document. See? This was Dad's will from 2008, before he even met you. Everything goes to his children. You get a little widow's stipend, but that's it. My heart was pounding. Robert updated his will. No, he didn't, Melissa said smugly. We already checked. This is the most recent one on file with his attorney. The one who'd been Robert's college roommate. The one who'd never liked me, but they didn't know about Thomas Brennan. The estate attorney I'd hired 3 months ago when Robert's health started declining, and I noticed Brandon suddenly being overly interested in helping Dad organize his finances. Thomas Brennan, who'd helped Robert and me quietly transfer the house deed into a trust with me as the primary beneficiary. Thomas Brennan, who'd helped me document every contribution I'd made to this household. Every joint account, every piece of proof that this was our life, not just Robert's life with me as an accessory. But I didn't say any of that. Not yet. I need you both to leave, I said instead. Right now, Brandon's smile was cruel. We're not going anywhere. But you are. Pack your shit and get into the guest house by Sunday, or I'll have you removed for trespassing. You can't do that. Watch me. He stepped even closer, close enough that I could smell the whiskey on his breath. You gold-digging bitch. You think we didn't know what you were doing? Alienating Dad from his real family? Manipulating a sick old man? Robert wasn't sick, I said through clenched teeth. And I never alienated. Enough! Brandon slammed his hand on the counter, making me jump. You're done talking. Get your stuff and get out of the main house. Now. Tonight. Or I start throwing your belongings out myself. Jennifer and Melissa stood there, nodding like backup singers. That's when I pulled out my phone. What are you doing? Brandon demanded. Calling my attorney. I said calmly. He snatched the phone out of my hand. Actually grabbed it right out of my hand like I was a child. You don't need an attorney, he snarled. You need to learn your place. And that's when I smiled, because they'd just given me everything I needed, but they didn't know that yet. They didn't know about the security cameras Robert and I had installed 6 months ago after a break-in down the street. They didn't know about the recorded phone calls. They didn't know about the paper trail I'd been building since July. When Brandon had gotten drunk at a family barbecue and told his sister, loud enough for me to hear, "Don't worry. Once Dad dies, we'll take care of the Margaret problem." They had no idea what was coming. "Get out of my house," I repeated. "All of you, now." Brandon grabbed my arm. Hard enough to hurt. "Make me," he whispered. So I did. But not that night. That night, I went upstairs to the guest room. I'd already moved myself there. Unable to sleep in the bed I'd shared with Robert, locked the door and called Thomas Brennan. "Margaret?" His voice was concerned. "It's almost 11 p.m. Are you okay?" "They're trying to force me out," I said. "Tonight." Brandon physically grabbed me. A pause. "Did you record it?" "The security cameras did." "Good." I could hear papers rustling. "Here's what we're going to do. Don't engage with them anymore tonight. Stay in that room. In the morning, I'm filing for an emergency restraining order. We have more than enough evidence, the harassment, the threats, the physical intimidation, and the documentation that the house is legally yours through the trust. How long will it take?" "Judge Martinez owes me a favor. I can have officers there by 9 a.m. with the order." "But Margaret," his voice softened, "this is going to get uglier before it gets better. Are you sure you want to do this? We could try negotiation." "No," I interrupted. "No negotiation. They've shown me exactly who they are. Robert would be heartbroken to see what his children have become, but he'd want me to fight. All right then. Don't come out of that room until you hear from me. And Margaret? Try to sleep. Tomorrow we go to war." I didn't sleep. Instead, I sat by the window, watching the sun come up over the garden I'd planted, the pool where Robert and I had spent countless summer evenings, the life we'd built together. And I waited. But I didn't know that Brandon and Melissa had their own plan forming downstairs. I didn't know they were calling a locksmith to change all the locks first thing in the morning. I didn't know Jennifer was already posting on Facebook about finally claiming what's rightfully ours. The next morning was going to change everything, but I still didn't know the worst part yet. I heard them at 6 a.m. footsteps on the stairs, whispered conversations, the sound of boxes being dragged across hardwood floors. They were actually doing it. They were moving in. I stayed in my room, phone in hand, waiting for Thomas's call. Every few minutes, I'd refresh my email, checking for any update. Nothing yet. At 6:47 a.m., someone tried my door handle. "Margaret?" It was Melissa's voice, fake sweet. "Are you awake? We brought you some coffee." I didn't answer. "Margaret, don't be childish. We need to discuss the logistics of your move to the guest house. Brandon's being very generous, letting you stay on the property at all." Still, I said nothing. The handle jiggled more aggressively. "Fine, be that way. But we're changing the locks at 8 a.m. and you're not getting a key to the main house. So if you have anything in here you actually care about, I'd suggest you start packing." Her footsteps retreated down the hall. My phone buzzed. Finally. Thomas. Judge signed off. Officers dispatched. ETA 8:45 a.m. Stay put. This is going to be very satisfying. I allowed myself a small smile. At 7:15, I heard a truck pull up. Through my window, I could see a locksmith's van in the driveway. Brandon was outside, gesturing at the doors, explaining something. They were really doing this. Actually changing the locks on my house. My phone buzzed again. A text from a number I didn't recognize. Mrs. Hayes? This is Officer Chen. We're 20 minutes out. Attorney Brennan briefed us on the situation. We have the restraining order. Stay safe. 20 minutes. I could last 20 minutes. At 7:30, I heard Brandon's voice right outside my door. Last chance, Margaret. Come out and we'll talk like adults. Stay in there and we're taking everything we think is Dad's. And trust me, we think all of this is Dad's. I heard them enter the master bedroom, mine and Robert's room. The room where he'd died in my arms during those final moments before the ambulance arrived. Where we'd celebrated our last anniversary just 2 months ago. The sound of drawers opening. Hangers scraping. Brandon's voice. Most of this is trash. Dad had terrible taste after she got her claws in him. Jennifer laughed. We'll donate it all. Get you some proper clothes. I gripped my phone so hard my knuckles went white. At 8:02, they started removing Robert's belongings. I could hear them on the stairs carrying boxes down. His clothes, his books, probably the photo albums I'd so carefully organized, full of memories they weren't even in because they'd barely visited while he was alive. At 8:15, someone pounded on my door again. Locksmith is done, Brandon called out cheerfully. We've got new keys. You don't. So when you decide to stop this ridiculous tantrum and come out, you'll need to knock like a visitor, because that's what you are now, Margaret. A visitor in our house. Our house? The house Robert and I had bought together in 2012. The house where I'd nursed him through pneumonia. Where we'd hosted Thanksgiving dinners that his children never attended. Where we'd danced in the kitchen and planned our retirement. At 8:33, my phone rang. They're pulling into the driveway now, Thomas said. 2 officers. They have the restraining order, the property documentation, and the trust paperwork. They've been briefed on the harassment and the illegal lockout attempt. Are you ready? I've been ready since last night, I said. Good. Stay on the phone with me. I want to hear this. At 8:37, the doorbell rang. I heard Brandon's irritated voice. What now? The door opened. A male voice, professional and firm. Good morning. I'm Officer Chen. This is Officer Rodriguez. We're looking for Brandon Hayes and Melissa Porter. That's me. And my sister's inside. What's this about? Sir, we need you to step outside. We have a restraining order to serve. A pause. Then Brandon's voice, confused and annoyed. A restraining order? From who? Margaret Hayes. Also present is an emergency order regarding property access and an order to cease harassment. If you'll step outside, we can discuss this. This is ridiculous. Margaret is, wait, this is my house. You can't serve me a restraining order at my own house. Actually, sir, according to the property records we've reviewed, this house is held in a trust with Margaret Hayes as the primary beneficiary. You're currently trespassing. Silence. I pressed my ear against the door. That's not right. My father owned this house. Your father, Robert Hayes, transferred the property to a trust in July of this year. We have the documentation. Now, I need you to step outside so we can explain your legal obligations. Melissa, Brandon shouted. Melissa! Get out here. Footsteps running. Melissa's voice. What's going on? These officers claim that Margaret owns the house. That's impossible. We have Dad's will from... Ma'am, Officer Rodriguez interrupted. The will you're referring to predates the trust. The trust supersedes previous documentation. Mrs. Hayes has legal ownership and is currently residing in the property. You've changed the locks, which constitutes an illegal lockout. You have 30 minutes to collect your personal belongings and vacate the premises." "This is insane," Melissa shrieked. "She's a gold digger. She manipulated our father." "Ma'am, I understand you're upset, but we're here to enforce a legal order. Additionally, there are allegations of harassment, intimidation, and assault. Last night at approximately 8:47 p.m., there's security footage showing Mr. Hayes physically grabbing Mrs. Hayes. That alone is grounds for the restraining order." Brandon's voice went quiet. The dangerous kind of quiet. "Security footage?" "Yes, sir. The cameras you apparently didn't know about. Mrs. Hayes has been documenting everything. The threats, the intimidation, the attempts to force her from her home. It's all admissible evidence." I heard Jennifer's voice now, panicked. "Brandon, we already posted on Facebook about moving in. Everyone knows. This is humiliating." "Then I suggest you take it down," Officer Chen said dryly. "Mr. Hayes, Ms. Porter, here's what's going to happen. You're going to gather your immediate personal belongings. Nothing that belongs to Mrs. Hayes or this household. You're going to leave quietly. And you're going to stay at least 100 yards away from Mrs. Hayes and this property for the next 30 days, pending a full hearing. And if we don't?" Brandon's voice was shaking with rage. "Then you'll be arrested for violating a court order." "Your choice, sir." "Margaret." Brandon suddenly screamed. "Margaret! Get out here and face us, you coward!" I smiled and opened the door. I'd gotten dressed while waiting. Not in grief clothes. Not in the frumpy cardigan Melissa had once said made me look like someone's grandmother. I'd put on the navy suit I used to wear to board meetings. The one that made me feel powerful. I walked down the stairs slowly, phone still connected to Thomas, who I knew was hearing everything. All three of them, Brandon, Melissa, and Jennifer, stood in my foyer, flanked by two very large police officers. "Good morning," I said calmly. "You bitch." Melissa lunged forward. Officer Rodriguez stepped between us instantly. "Ma'am, step back right now or you're going in handcuffs. How could you do this?" Melissa's face was red and blotchy. "Dad would be ashamed of you." "Your father," I said clearly, "would be ashamed of you. He spent his last few years trying to rebuild a relationship with you both. He left me voicemails crying about how you only called when you needed money. He died hoping you'd realize he loved you despite everything." "Shut up." Brandon pointed at me. "You don't get to talk about him. You don't get to—" "Mr. Hayes, lower your hand and step back," Officer Chen warned. "She's lying." "Dad loved us?" He wouldn't what?" I stepped forward. "He wouldn't protect me? He wouldn't make sure I was taken care of?" "Brandon, your father and I were partners. We made decisions together. The trust wasn't my idea. It was ours. He wanted to make sure I'd be safe and secure if anything happened to him. He knew—" I paused, letting it sink in. "He knew exactly what you'd do." The look on Brandon's face was something between shock and rage. "In July," I continued, "your father sat in Thomas Brennan's office and told him, 'My children are going to try to take everything from Margaret the moment I'm gone. I need to make sure she's protected.' He said it broke his heart, but he knew what kind of people you'd become." "Liar." Melissa was crying now. "Dad wouldn't—" "Your father," I said quietly, "loved you until his last breath. But he loved me too. And he trusted me. That's something you never understood." Officer Chen cleared his throat. "Mrs. Hayes, I apologize, but we need to execute this order. Mr. Hayes, Ms. Porter, Mrs. Hayes." He nodded at Jennifer. "You need to collect your belongings and leave now." We don't have anywhere to go, Jennifer protested. That's not Mrs. Hayes's problem, Officer Rodriguez said. You have 30 minutes. They stood there, frozen, like they couldn't believe this was real. The clock is ticking, I said softly. That's when Brandon's mask completely shattered. You're going to regret this, he whispered. You think a piece of paper protects you? You think this is over? You have no idea what's coming. Mr. Hayes, that sounds like a threat, Officer Chen said sharply. It's a promise, Brandon said, not breaking eye contact with me. Sir, you need to leave, now. They grabbed their things, the boxes they'd already packed, the bags they'd brought. The locksmith, who'd been waiting awkwardly in the driveway, was sent away. Officer Rodriguez took the new keys they'd had made and handed them to me. We'll change the locks again today, I said. These are compromised. Smart, he agreed. As Brandon walked past me toward the door, he leaned in close enough that the officers couldn't hear. This isn't over, he breathed. Not even close. Then they were gone. The door closed. The police cars left. The house was suddenly, completely silent. I stood in the foyer, my foyer, and let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. My phone was still connected. Thomas? That was beautiful, he said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. Absolutely beautiful. I recorded everything on my end. That threat from Brandon? That's evidence for the hearing. Margaret, you were perfect. I don't feel perfect, I admitted. I feel powerful, exhausted. He laughed gently. Why don't you rest? I'll have someone come change the locks this afternoon. And Margaret? You did the right thing. Robert would be proud. After we hung up, I walked through my house slowly. The master bedroom was a mess. They'd torn through drawers, left hangers on the floor, pulled things out of the closet. The guest room where they'd apparently been planning to put Jennifer's sewing room had boxes stacked everywhere. They'd treated my home like it was already theirs. I spent the next hour cleaning up, putting things back, reclaiming my space. When I got to the kitchen, I found something that made me stop cold. On the counter, where I'd been wrapping leftover food from the funeral, there was a note in Brandon's handwriting. Enjoy it while you can. This isn't over. You'll see. He'd left it there during the confrontation. A last little threat. I took a photo of it, sent it to Thomas, added it to the evidence pile. Then I threw it away and made myself a cup of coffee. The sun was streaming through. The kitchen windows. The windows I'd chosen, in the kitchen I'd designed, in the house that was legally, completely, undeniably mine. I sat at the counter and cried for the first time since Robert died. Not sad tears, relief tears, grief tears, anger tears. Tears for the marriage that had been real and beautiful and worth protecting. Tears for the man who'd loved me enough to make sure I'd be safe even after he was gone. And maybe, just a little bit, tears of satisfaction, but I didn't know that Brandon and Melissa weren't done. I didn't know they were already planning their next move. I didn't know that within 48 hours they'd try something so audacious, so illegal, that even Thomas would be shocked. Because here's what I didn't learn until later. That morning, while the police were serving the restraining order, Melissa had called their father's old lawyer, the college roommate who'd never liked me. And together, they'd hatched a plan to challenge the trust, claiming Robert had been mentally incompetent when he signed it. They were going to argue that I'd manipulated a sick, dying man, and they had 3 months to build their case before the hearing. But I had something better than 3 months. I had the truth, and I had Robert's own words. See, what Brandon and Melissa didn't know was that Robert had written me letters, lots of letters. Starting the day he transferred the house to the trust, he'd written me a letter every single week explaining his decisions, documenting his sound mind, expressing his love and his fears about what his children would do. 34 letters. All dated, all notarized, all stored safely in Thomas Brennan's office. Letters that began with, "To whom it may concern, but especially to my children if they ever read this. I am of sound mind and body. No one is coercing me. I am making these decisions to protect the woman I love because I know my children well enough to predict exactly what they'll do." Letters that ended with, "Brandon, Melissa, if you're reading this, it means you did exactly what I feared. I'm disappointed, but not surprised. Please leave Margaret alone. She didn't take anything from you. I gave it to her. Freely. Lovingly. With full knowledge of what I was doing. They had no idea what they were walking into, but they were about to find out. The locksmith came at 2 p.m. and installed new locks, better ones with smart technology that would alert me if anyone even tried to tamper with them. I gave a key to my neighbor, Mrs. Chen, no relation to the officer, a former lawyer herself who'd become a good friend. "I heard some commotion this morning," she said carefully as we had tea in my kitchen that afternoon. I told her everything. Her eyes went wide. "Margaret, that's harassment. That's abuse." "I know. That's why I have a restraining order. But they're not going to stop, are they?" "No," I admitted. "They're not." "Then you need to be careful. Document everything. Don't engage with them at all. Let the lawyers handle it." She squeezed my hand. "And call me if you need anything, day or night. I mean it." That night I slept in the master bedroom for the first time since Robert died. It felt wrong and right at the same time. The bed was too big without him, but it was my bed, in my house, and I'd earned the right to grieve in peace. At 11:47 p.m., my security system alert went off. Someone was at the front door. I pulled up the camera feed on my phone, heart racing. It was Brandon. He was standing on my porch, staring directly at the camera, phone to his ear. As I watched, my own phone rang from a blocked number. I didn't answer. He rang the doorbell. Once, twice, 3 times. I called 911. "This is Margaret Hayes at 247 Oakwood Drive. I have a restraining order against my stepson, Brandon Hayes. He's currently on my porch violating that order." The dispatcher's voice was calm and professional. "Officers are on the way. Do not engage with him. Stay inside and keep your doors locked." "I am." Brandon stood there for 5 more minutes just staring at the camera. Then he pulled something from his pocket. A key. One of the old keys from before I'd changed the locks. He tried it in the door. Obviously it didn't work. He tried it again. And again. Then he started pounding on the door. "Margaret, I know you're in there. Open this door. We need to talk." I stayed silent, phone in hand, recording everything. "You can't hide forever. That house is ours." "Dad would never." Blue lights lit up the street. Brandon turned, saw the police car, and his whole demeanor changed. Instantly he was calm, reasonable-looking, hands visible. 2 officers got out, neither of them the ones from this morning, but they clearly knew the situation. "Sir, step away from the door." "Officer, I can explain. I'm just trying to talk to my stepmother. There's been a terrible misunderstanding." "Sir, you have a restraining order. You're not supposed to be within 100 yards of this property. You're currently about 3 feet from the door." "I just want to—" "You're under arrest for violating a court order." I watched from my bedroom window as they handcuffed him, as they read him his rights, as they put him in the back of the patrol car. He looked up at my window one last time before they drove away. The smile on his face was chilling, because he didn't look angry anymore. He looked satisfied, like this was all part of his plan. And that's when I realized Brandon wanted to be arrested. He wanted to look like the victim, the grieving son being persecuted by the evil stepmother. He was building a narrative, but so was I. The next morning, Thomas called with news. "They filed to contest the trust," he said, claiming incompetence. "They're saying Robert was mentally unfit when he signed the papers." "I know. I was expecting that." "Were you expecting their evidence?" He paused. "Margaret, they have a doctor's statement from Robert's primary physician, saying that Robert had been showing signs of cognitive decline." My blood ran cold. "That's not true. Robert was sharp as a tack until the day he died." "I know, but this doctor, Dr. Mitchell, apparently wrote a note 3 months before Robert died saying he'd observed some memory issues." Dr. Mitchell was Robert's college roommate's brother. He's in Brandon's pocket. That's what I thought. So I pulled Robert's medical records from his actual doctor, Dr. Patel, the one he'd been seeing for 15 years. Want to guess what they show? Perfect cognitive function. Bingo. Dr. Mitchell saw Robert exactly once for a routine physical that Brandon had convinced him to do, claiming his regular doctor was unavailable. It was a setup from the start. So what do? "We destroy them," Thomas said simply. "The hearing is in 3 weeks. We present Dr. Patel's records, we present Robert's letters, we present the evidence of their harassment, and we show the judge exactly what kind of people they are. Will it work?" "Margaret, they don't have a case. They have a fraudulent doctor's note and a lot of anger. We have evidence, documentation, and Robert's own words. Yes, it will work." But even as he said it, I felt a creeping sense of dread. Because Brandon's smile in the back of that police car kept haunting me. He wasn't acting like someone who'd lost. He was acting like someone who had a backup plan. And then I received the email that changed everything. That's when Brandon's mask completely shattered. "You're going to regret this," he whispered. "You think a piece of paper protects you? You think this is over? You have no idea what's coming." "Mr. Hayes, that sounds like a threat," Officer Chen said sharply. "It's a promise," Brandon said, not breaking eye contact with me. "Sir, you need to leave. Now." They grabbed their things, the boxes they'd already packed, the bags they'd brought. The locksmith, who'd been waiting awkwardly in the driveway, was sent away. Officer Rodriguez took the new keys they'd had made and handed them to me. "We'll change the locks again today," I said. "These are compromised." "Smart," he agreed. As Brandon walked past me toward the door, he leaned in close enough that the officers couldn't hear. "This isn't over," he breathed. "Not even close." Then they were gone. The door closed. The police cars left. The house was suddenly, completely silent. I stood in the foyer, my foyer, and let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. My phone was still connected. "Thomas?" "That was beautiful," he said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. "Absolutely beautiful. I recorded everything on my end. That threat from Brandon? That's evidence for the hearing. Margaret, you were perfect." "I don't feel perfect," I admitted. "I feel powerful, exhausted." He laughed gently. "Why don't you rest? I'll have someone come change the locks this afternoon. And Margaret? You did the right thing. Robert would be proud." After we hung up, I walked through my house slowly. The master bedroom was a mess. They'd torn through drawers, left hangers on the floor, pulled things out of the closet. The guest room where they'd apparently been planning to put Jennifer's sewing room had boxes stacked everywhere. They'd treated my home like it was already theirs. I spent the next hour cleaning up, putting things back, reclaiming my space. When I got to the kitchen, I found something that made me stop cold. On the counter, where I'd been wrapping leftover food from the funeral, there was a note in Brandon's handwriting. "Enjoy it while you can. This isn't over. You'll see." He'd left it there during the confrontation. A last little threat. I took a photo of it, sent it to Thomas, added it to the evidence pile. Then I threw it away and made myself a cup of coffee. The sun was streaming through. The kitchen windows. The windows I'd chosen, in the kitchen I'd designed, in the house that was legally, completely, undeniably mine. I sat at the counter and cried for the first time since Robert died. Not sad tears, relief tears, grief tears, anger tears. Tears for the marriage that had been real and beautiful and worth protecting. Tears for the man who'd loved me enough to make sure I'd be safe even after he was gone. And maybe, just a little bit, tears of satisfaction, but I didn't know that Brandon and Melissa weren't done. I didn't know they were already planning their next move. I didn't know that within 48 hours they'd try something so audacious, so illegal, that even Thomas would be shocked. Because here's what I didn't learn until later. That morning, while the police were serving the restraining order, Melissa had called their father's old lawyer, the college roommate who'd never liked me. And together, they'd hatched a plan to challenge the trust, claiming Robert had been mentally incompetent when he signed it. They were going to argue that I'd manipulated a sick, dying man, and they had 3 months to build their case before the hearing. But I had something better than 3 months. I had the truth. And I had Robert's own words. See, what Brandon and Melissa didn't know was that Robert had written me letters. Lots of letters. Starting the day he transferred the house to the trust, he'd written me a letter every single week explaining his decisions, documenting his sound mind, expressing his love and his fears about what his children would do. 34 letters. All dated, all notarized, all stored safely in Thomas Brennan's office. Letters that began with, "To whom it may concern, but especially to my children if they ever read this. I am of sound mind and body. No one is coercing me. I am making these decisions to protect the woman I love because I know my children well enough to predict exactly what they'll do." Letters that ended with, "Brandon, Melissa, if you're reading this, it means you did exactly what I feared. I'm disappointed, but not surprised. Please leave Margaret alone. She didn't take anything from you. I gave it to her. Freely. Lovingly. With full knowledge of what I was doing. They had no idea what they were walking into, but they were about to find out. The locksmith came at 2 p.m. and installed new locks. Better ones with smart technology that would alert me if anyone even tried to tamper with them. I gave a key to my neighbor, Mrs. Chen, no relation to the officer, a former lawyer herself who'd become a good friend. I heard some commotion this morning, she said carefully as we had tea in my kitchen that afternoon. I told her everything. Her eyes went wide. Margaret, that's harassment. That's abuse. I know. That's why I have a restraining order. But they're not going to stop, are they? No, I admitted. They're not. Then you need to be careful. Document everything. Don't engage with them at all. Let the lawyers handle it. She squeezed my hand. And call me if you need anything, day or night. I mean it. That night, I slept in the master bedroom for the first time since Robert died. It felt wrong and right at the same time. The bed was too big without him, but it was my bed, in my house, and I'd earned the right to grieve in peace. At 11:47 p.m., my security system alert went off. Someone was at the front door. I pulled up the camera feed on my phone, heart racing. It was Brandon. He was standing on my porch, staring directly at the camera, phone to his ear. As I watched, my own phone rang from a blocked number. I didn't answer. He rang the doorbell. Once, twice, 3 times. I called 911. This is Margaret Hayes at 247 Oakwood Drive. I have a restraining order against my stepson, Brandon Hayes. He's currently on my porch violating that order. The dispatcher's voice was calm and professional. Officers are on the way. Do not engage with him. Stay inside and keep your doors locked. I am. Brandon stood there for 5 more minutes just staring at the camera. Then he pulled something from his pocket. A key. One of the old keys from before I'd changed the locks. He tried it in the door. Obviously, it didn't work. He tried it again. And again. Then he started pounding on the door. Margaret, I know you're in there. Open this door. We need to talk. I stayed silent, phone in hand, recording everything. You can't hide forever. That house is ours. Dad would never. Blue lights lit up the street. Brandon turned, saw the police car, and his whole demeanor changed. Instantly, he was calm, reasonable-looking, hands visible. 2 officers got out, neither of them the ones from this morning, but they clearly knew the situation. Sir, step away from the door. Officer, I can explain. I'm just trying to talk to my stepmother. There's been a terrible misunderstanding. Sir, you have a restraining order. You're not supposed to be within 100 yards of this property. You're currently about 3 feet from the door. I just want to... You're under arrest for violating a court order. I watched from my bedroom window as they handcuffed him, as they read him his rights, as they put him in the back of the patrol car. He looked up at my window one last time before they drove away. The smile on his face was chilling, because he didn't look angry anymore. He looked satisfied, like this was all part of his plan. And that's when I realized. Brandon wanted to be arrested. He wanted to look like the victim, the grieving son being persecuted by the evil stepmother. He was building a narrative, but so was I. The next morning, Thomas called with news. They filed to contest the trust, he said, claiming incompetence. They're saying Robert was mentally unfit when he signed the papers. I know. I was expecting that. Were you expecting their evidence? He paused. Margaret, they have a doctor's statement from Robert's primary physician. saying that Robert had been showing signs of cognitive decline. My blood ran cold. That's not true. Robert was sharp as a tack until the day he died. I know, but this doctor, Dr. Mitchell, apparently wrote a note 3 months before Robert died saying he'd observed some memory issues. Dr. Mitchell was Robert's college roommate's brother. He's in Brandon's pocket. That's what I thought. So I pulled Robert's medical records from his actual doctor, Dr. Patel, the one he'd been seeing for 15 years. Want to guess what they show? Perfect cognitive function. Bingo. Dr. Mitchell saw Robert exactly once for a routine physical that Brandon had convinced him to do, claiming his regular doctor was unavailable. It was a setup from the start. So what do? We destroy them, Thomas said simply. The hearing is in 3 weeks. We present Dr. Patel's records, we present Robert's letters, we present the evidence of their harassment, and we show the judge exactly what kind of people they are. Will it work? Margaret, they don't have a case. They have a fraudulent doctor's note and a lot of anger. We have evidence, documentation, and Robert's own words. Yes, it will work. But even as he said it, I felt a creeping sense of dread. Because Brandon's smile in the back of that police car kept haunting me. He wasn't acting like someone who'd lost. He was acting like someone who had a backup plan. And then I received the email that changed everything. It was from a law firm I didn't recognize. The subject line, regarding Robert Hayes' estate, urgent. I opened it. Dear Mrs. Hayes, our firm represents Brandon Hayes and Melissa Porter in the matter of the estate of Robert Hayes. We are writing to inform you that our clients have discovered evidence of financial elder abuse. Specifically, we have obtained bank records showing that in the 6 months before Robert Hayes' death, you withdrew $247,000 from joint accounts without his knowledge or permission. These withdrawals, combined with the suspicious timing of the trust creation, suggest a pattern of manipulation and potential criminal behavior. We are referring this matter to the Connecticut State Attorney for investigation. We strongly advise you to retain criminal defense counsel. Sincerely, Morrison, Fletcher, and Associates. My hands were shaking so hard I almost dropped the phone. $247,000. I had withdrawn that money, but not for the reason they were implying. I'd withdrawn it because Robert and I were renovating the pool house, paying for it in cash to get a discount from the contractor. Robert had signed off on every single check. We had a whole folder of receipts, signed agreements, before and after photos, but they were making it sound like embezzlement. I called Thomas immediately. I see it, he said. His voice was tight. They sent me a copy too. Margaret, this is serious. They're not just fighting for the house anymore. They're trying to get you arrested. But I have all the receipts. I know, and will present them. But Margaret, this changes the timeline. If the state attorney actually opens an investigation, this could drag on for months. They're trying to freeze you out, make you spend all your money on lawyers, force you to settle. I'm not settling. I didn't think you would. He paused. There's something else. The police report from Brandon's arrest last night? He's claiming you violated the restraining order. He's saying he was there to pick up belongings he'd left behind, and you called the police to harass him. That's insane. He tried to use an old key. He was pounding on my door. I know. And we have video evidence. But they're playing dirty now, Margaret. Really dirty. They're throwing everything at the wall to see what sticks. I sat down hard on the couch. What do? You fight. We gather every piece of evidence, The renovation receipts, the contractor agreements, the signed checks. We show that every penny was accounted for and approved. And Margaret? His voice softened. We use the letters, all 34 of them, because in letter number 12, Robert specifically mentions the pool house renovation and how excited he is about it. Of course he did. Robert had documented everything, because he knew his children would try this. When can we meet? I asked. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m., my office. Bring every document related to that money, every receipt, every scrap of paper. We're going to build a timeline so airtight they'll choke on it. That night, I couldn't sleep. I went through every file box, every folder, every drawer. The renovation receipts were all there, meticulously organized because that's how Robert and I had done everything. Joint decisions, joint documentation, joint signatures. The contractor's estimate, $185,000 for the pool house renovation, including electrical, plumbing, a full kitchen addition, and new bathrooms. The actual invoices, $182,347 to $89. We'd come in under budget. The remaining $64,652.11. A new car for me, a Honda CR-V that I'd wanted for years. Robert had insisted on paying cash. It's your birthday, our anniversary, and Christmas all wrapped into one, he'd said, signing the check with a flourish. The dealership paperwork had both our signatures, every penny accounted for. But I realized something as I went through the papers. Brandon and Melissa didn't actually believe I'd stolen the money. They knew exactly what it had been used for. Brandon had even complained about the pool house renovation, saying it was a waste since we were old people who wouldn't even use it. This wasn't about the money. This was about destroying me, about making me look like a criminal, about taking away not just the house, but my dignity, my reputation, my freedom. They wanted me in prison. At 3 a.m., I was still sitting on my living room floor, surrounded by documents, when my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You should have taken the guest house when we offered it. Now you're going to lose everything, including your freedom. Sleep well, Margaret. I took a screenshot, added it to the evidence folder, sent it to Thomas. Within 2 minutes, he responded, "That's witness intimidation. Criminal offense. Save everything. They're digging their own graves." The next morning, I drove to Thomas's office in downtown Hartford. It was a beautiful October day, the kind Robert and I used to love, with leaves changing colors and that perfect autumn crispness in the air. Thomas's office was on the 10th floor of a glass building overlooking the Connecticut River. His paralegal, Yolanda, met me in the lobby with a warm hug. "Mrs. Hayes, we've got your back," she said firmly. "Mr. Brennan has been working non-stop on this case." In the conference room, Thomas had everything laid out like a war room. Timeline on the wall. Documents organized by category. A laptop open to what looked like financial records. "Okay," he said. "All business. Let's dismantle their case piece by piece." We spent 4 hours going through everything. Every withdrawal had a corresponding receipt. Every check had both signatures. The timeline showed that Robert had been actively involved in every financial decision right up until his death. "This is perfect," Thomas said. "But we need more. We need to show motive, why they're really doing this. Isn't it obvious? They want the house." "It's deeper than that." He pulled out a folder I hadn't seen before. "I did some digging. Brandon filed for bankruptcy 2 years ago. Melissa's husband left her last year and she got almost nothing in the divorce because of a prenup. They're both deeply in debt. When Robert died, they weren't just grieving. They were counting on an inheritance to save them financially. Robert didn't know about the bankruptcy. Brandon hid it from him, didn't want his father to know he'd failed. And Melissa, she's been living off credit cards for 18 months. She needs money desperately. It all clicked into place. So, when they discovered the trust, they realized their financial lifeline had just disappeared. This isn't about grief or family. It's about money. It's always been about money. Can we use that in court? Absolutely. It establishes motive for their harassment and their false claims. Judge Martinez needs to understand that this is a financially motivated attack on a grieving widow. We worked through lunch, building the case. Thomas had even tracked down the contractor who'd done the pool house renovation. Miguel Rodriguez, Thomas said, showing me a statement. He's willing to testify that Robert was present for every major decision, that Robert would call him directly to discuss changes, that Robert was sharp, funny, and completely in control of his faculties. Miguel said, and I quote, "That man knew exactly what he wanted, and his wife made sure he got it. They were a team." I felt tears prickling my eyes. Robert loved that project. He drew sketches of how he wanted the kitchen laid out. I know. Miguel kept them. We have those too. By 2 p.m., we had a defense so solid that Thomas was confident. They don't have a case, Margaret. Not for the trust challenge, not for the elder abuse claims. We're going to win. Then why am I still so worried? He leaned back in his chair. Because you're smart. Because people like Brandon and Melissa don't give up easily. Because even when we win in court, they might keep coming after you in other ways. So what do? You document everything. You don't engage with them. You let the restraining order do its job, and you prepare for the hearing in 3 weeks where we're going to shut this down permanently. I left his office feeling more confident, but there was still that nagging sense of dread. The next 2 weeks were hell. Brandon made bail the same day he was arrested. The criminal charge for violating the restraining order was pending, but he was out, and he was busy. I started getting friend requests on Facebook from people I didn't know. Brandon's friends, his co-workers, his wife's book club members. When I checked his page, which was public, I saw why. He'd written a long post about elder abuse and how his father's widow had manipulated and isolated a sick man. He'd shared articles about gold diggers. He'd even created a hashtag, Friar's Justice for Robert Hayes. It was getting shared, a lot. People who didn't know me, who'd never met Robert, were calling me a monster in the comments. Don't respond, Thomas advised when I called him. Don't engage. This is harassment, and it's actually helping our case. Every post is evidence of their campaign against you. But it hurt. God, it hurt. I had to stop going to the grocery store in town because people would stare. My hairdresser's receptionist was suddenly booked solid when I tried to make an appointment. The coffee shop where Robert and I used to go every Sunday changed their attitude. The barista who used to chat with me now avoided eye contact. Brandon was poisoning the town against me, and Melissa was working on the legal front. She'd apparently hired a private investigator who was following me. I'd see the same car behind me when I drove to the bank, the same man sitting in Starbucks when I met Thomas for coffee. Get a picture of him, Thomas instructed. That's stalking. I did. Sent it to Thomas. He filed another complaint. As they led him away, he called back, This isn't over, Margaret. You hear me? Not over! The courtroom doors closed behind him. Judge Martinez looked at me with something like sympathy. Mrs. Hayes, I'm going to recommend that the police increase patrols near your home. Document everything. If he contacts you again in any way, call 911 immediately. Do you understand? Yes, Your Honor. I'm sorry for your loss. Your husband sounds like he was a good man who loved you very much. He was, I whispered. Thank you. Outside the courthouse, Thomas hugged me. You did it. You actually did it? We did it, I corrected. No. You did it. You stood up to them. You gathered the evidence. You refused to be intimidated. Margaret, I've been doing this for 25 years, and I've never seen anyone handle a situation like this with such grace and strength. I started crying then. Not sad tears. Not relief tears, just release. What happens now? I asked. Now? You go home. You live your life. You heal. And you let the justice system handle Brandon and Melissa's criminal charges. And if they come after me again, then we bury them, again. But Margaret? He smiled. I don't think they will. You just showed them exactly what happens when they underestimate you. But I was wrong about that, and so was Thomas. Because 2 days later, I got a call that made my blood run cold. It was Uncle Frank. Margaret, thank God you answered. Have you seen the news? No, why? Brandon gave an interview to one of those true crime podcasts. He's claiming you murdered Robert. My legs gave out. I sat down hard on my kitchen floor. What? He's saying Robert's heart attack was suspicious. That the timing of the trust was suspicious. That you had motive and opportunity. Margaret, he's calling you a murderer on a podcast with 3 million listeners. And then I received the email. That made me realize this fight was far from over. It was from the Connecticut State Medical Examiner's Office. Request for exhumation of remains Robert Hayes. They were going to dig up my husband's body because Brandon had convinced someone somehow that Robert's death needed to be investigated. And when the police called me an hour later, asking me to come in for voluntary questioning about the circumstances of Robert's death, I realized something terrifying. Brandon wasn't trying to take my house anymore. He was trying to take my freedom. But I still didn't know the worst part, because what the police didn't tell me on that call, what I wouldn't discover, until I was actually sitting in that interrogation room, was that Brandon had a witness. Someone who claimed they'd seen me do something to Robert's coffee the morning he died. Someone who was willing to testify that they'd seen me poison my own husband. And then everything I thought I knew about that terrible morning was about to be called into question. The interrogation room smelled like industrial cleaner and bad coffee. Detective Sarah Morrison, no relation to Brandon's attorney, thankfully, sat across from me with a file folder that seemed way too thick for what should have been a straightforward conversation. Thomas sat beside me, his presence the only thing keeping me from falling apart completely. Mrs. Hayes, Detective Morrison began, her voice professionally neutral. Thank you for coming in voluntarily. We just have a few questions about the morning your husband died. My client is happy to cooperate, Thomas said carefully, but I want it on record that she's here voluntarily and is not under arrest or suspicion. Noted. The detective opened her folder. Mrs. Hayes, can you walk me through the morning of September 17th? I took a breath. Robert and I woke up around 6:30. We had coffee on the back patio like we did most mornings. We were talking about our neighbor's cat. It had gotten into our garage the night before. Robert was laughing. He was completely normal. Around 7:15, he just collapsed. I called 911 immediately and performed CPR until the paramedics arrived. Who made the coffee that morning? A cold feeling crept up my spine. I did. I always made the coffee. Robert liked his with cream and 1 sugar. I take mine black. And you both drank from the same pot? Yes, always. Detective Morrison pulled out a photo. Mrs. Hayes, do you know this person? It was a young woman, maybe 30, blonde. I'd never seen her before. No, who is she? Her name is Ashley Brenner. She was a home health aide. We never had a home health aide. Robert wasn't sick. She claims she was sent by your stepson Brandon to check on your husband. She says she visited your home 3 times in August, and that on one of those visits, she saw you putting something into your husband's coffee. The room tilted. That's absolutely not true. We never had any home health aide. No one named Ashley was ever in my house. Thomas leaned forward. Detective, do you have any proof this woman was ever actually at the Hayes residence? Security footage? Signed documentation? Mr. Hayes claims he hired her discreetly because he was worried about his father. Of course he does, Thomas said dryly. After he's already tried to claim the trust was invalid, that Robert was incompetent, and that my client stole money. Now he's moved on to murder? This is a pattern of false accusations from someone who has a financial motive to discredit Mrs. Hayes. We're just investigating all allegations, Detective Morrison said. But there's more. We've subpoenaed your husband's medical records from the hospital. The attending physician noted that the heart attack was particularly severe for someone with no prior cardiac history. Robert's father died of a heart attack at 58, I said, my voice shaking. His uncle died of one at 62. It runs in the family. This is in his medical history. We're aware. But combined with the witness statement and the timing of the trust creation, we need to rule out any possibility of foul play. This is insane, I whispered. I loved Robert. I didn't hurt him. Then you won't mind if we exhume the body for a full toxicology screening? The words hit like a physical blow. The idea of them digging up Robert, disturbing his rest, treating him like evidence in some crime I didn't commit. Yes, I mind, I said firmly. I mind very much. But if it's what you need to do to end this nightmare Brandon has created, then do it. Because you won't find anything. Thomas put a hand on my arm. Detective, my client is cooperating fully. But let's be clear about what's happening here. Brandon Hayes has made multiple false claims against Mrs. Hayes. All of them have been disproven. Now he's manufacturing a witness, a woman who conveniently appears after every other avenue has failed, to make criminal accusations. This is harassment and it's defamation. We're investigating the claims, Mr. Brennan. That's our job. Then investigate Brandon Hayes, too. Look into Ashley Brenner. Find out who's paying her, what her relationship to Brandon is, whether she's ever actually been a home health aide. Because I guarantee you'll find she's lying. Detective Morrison closed her folder. We'll be in touch about the exhumation. In the meantime, Mrs. Hayes, don't leave the state. Am I being charged with something? Not at this time. But we need to complete our investigation. Outside the police station, I broke down completely. They're going to arrest me, I sobbed. Thomas, they're going to arrest me for murdering Robert. No, they're not. Because you didn't do it, and there's no evidence because it didn't happen. He guided me to his car. Listen to me. This is Brandon's last desperate play. He's lost everything else. The house, the inheritance, his freedom once those criminal charges stick. So now he's trying to destroy you completely. But he made a mistake. What mistake? He got sloppy. Ashley Brenner is going to be our key to unraveling this whole thing, because I'm willing to bet she's either a girlfriend, a friend, or someone he's paying. And once we prove that, the entire case collapses. Within 24 hours, Thomas had hired his own private investigator. Her name was Carmen Rodriguez, and she was apparently the best in Connecticut. She called me 3 days later. "Mrs. Hayes, you're going to want to sit down for this." I was already sitting, but I gripped the armrest of my chair anyway. "Ashley Brenner has never worked as a home health aide. She has no medical training, no certifications, nothing. She's a bartender at a place called Murphy's in Hartford." "Okay. And she's been dating Brandon Hayes for 6 months, since before your husband died." The world stopped spinning. What? Brandon Hayes was having an affair, while still married to Jennifer, with Ashley Brenner. And here's the really interesting part. Jennifer filed for divorce 2 weeks ago, citing adultery. She's named Ashley Brenner as the other woman in the filing. Oh my God, it gets better. Jennifer is willing to talk to us. She's angry, she's vindictive, and she wants to burn Brandon to the ground. She says he told Ashley to claim she was a home health aide and to say she saw you do something suspicious. It was part of his plan to get the inheritance by any means necessary. Can she testify to that? She already gave a sworn statement to my colleague. "Mrs. Hayes, we've got him. He manufactured evidence. He convinced his girlfriend to lie to police about witnessing a crime. That's obstruction of justice, conspiracy, filing a false police report. The charges are going to stack up so high he'll be lucky to see daylight before he's 60. I should have felt relief. Instead, I felt exhausted. What about the exhumation? Detective Morrison called your attorney an hour ago. They're canceling it. Once they learned about Ashley Brenner's relationship to Brandon and her lack of credentials, they realized they'd been played. They're not happy. Brandon is being brought in for questioning as we speak. And I forgave myself for surviving when Robert didn't. That was the hardest part, actually. The guilt of still being here, still having a future, still getting to live when he didn't. But I could hear Robert's voice in my head, reading that letter over and over. Don't let them take this from you too, so I didn't. 2 years after Robert died, I was sitting on my patio, the one I'd fought so hard to keep, when my phone rang. It was a number from the Connecticut Department of Corrections. I almost didn't answer. But curiosity won. "Hello? Mrs. Hayes?" A pause. "It's Brandon." My first instinct was to hang up. But something made me stay on the line. "What do you want, Brandon?" I'm calling to apologize." I said nothing. "I know you have no reason to believe me. I know I destroyed any chance of a relationship with you. But I've been in here for 2 years, and I've had a lot of time to think about what I did. About who I became. And you were right. About everything. Dad loved you. He made his choices with a clear mind. He was protecting you from me because he knew. He knew I'd become someone he'd be ashamed of." His voice cracked. "I was so angry about my own failures that I blamed you for them. I convinced myself you'd stolen my father when the truth was I'd lost him all on my own, years before you even met him." I closed my eyes. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because Emma visits me, and she tells me about having coffee with you, about hearing stories about Dad, about how happy you two were, and I realized that I never saw him happy like that, because I never bothered to look. I was too busy being angry that he'd moved on after Mom left. Your mother left him, Brandon. He didn't abandon her, I know. I know that now. But I was 15 and angry and I needed someone to blame. And then when he found you, when he was happy again, it felt like a betrayal, like he was replacing not just Mom, but us. He never wanted to replace you. He wanted to include you. I know that now too." A long pause. "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I'm just asking if you can accept my apology. And if you can let Emma keep visiting you. She needs you. She needs those stories about Dad. She needs to know what real love looks like so she doesn't repeat my mistakes. I thought about it for a long moment. I accept your apology, Brandon. Not because you've earned it, but because Robert would have wanted me to. He loved you until the end, even when you didn't deserve it. So I'll do the same. Thank you. He was crying now. And Margaret, I'm glad he had you. I'm glad he was happy. I'm glad he didn't die alone and bitter like he could have. You gave him something I never could. I gave him what he gave me. Partnership, respect, love. Yeah. A pause. Emma told me about the foundation. About the people you've helped. Dad would be so proud of you. I hope so. I know so. We said goodbye. I never heard from him again. But it was enough. Closure isn't always big and dramatic. Sometimes it's just a phone call from a broken man who finally understands what he lost. It's been 5 years since Robert died. I'm 67 now. The house is paid off. The garden is exactly how I always wanted it. The pool house renovation is finally finished. I did it myself over 2 summers, with help from Emma and her boyfriend, now fiancé. The foundation has helped over 60 people now. We've expanded to 3 states. I sit on the board and speak at fundraisers, telling my story so other people know they're not alone. Uncle Frank passed away last year. Peacefully, in his sleep, he left me his collection of Robert's childhood photos with a note. These belong with someone who loved him. Mrs. Chen and I have coffee every morning now. Her husband joins us sometimes. They've become the family I chose. Patricia retired and moved to Florida, but we FaceTime every week. Emma got married last month. I walked her down the aisle because her father couldn't be there. She asked me to, said I was the one who'd shown her what a strong woman looks like. I cried through the whole ceremony. Melissa reached out last year. Not to apologize, not exactly, but to say she was in therapy, working on herself, trying to understand why she'd been so willing to hurt someone who'd never hurt her. I wished her well. I didn't invite her to coffee. Some relationships can't be repaired, and that's okay. Jennifer finished her divorce, went back to school, and became a social worker. She works with victims of domestic abuse now. She says helping other people helps her forgive herself. We're not friends, but we're friendly. That's enough. I never remarried. I've dated a little, nothing serious. Maybe someday. Maybe not. I'm happy either way. Because here's what I learned. My worth isn't tied to someone else. Not to a husband, not to stepchildren who hated me, not to a town that believed lies about me, not to anyone. I am enough on my own, but I'm also not alone. I have Emma, I have friends, I have purpose, I have this house, yes, but more than that, I have proof that standing up for yourself matters. That documentation and preparation and refusing to be a victim makes a difference. I have 34 letters from a man who loved me enough to anticipate exactly how his death would be weaponized against me, and who made sure I'd be protected. I have my dignity intact, and I have this story. People ask me sometimes, women my age, mostly who've heard about what happened, they ask if I regret marrying Robert. If I regret the drama, the pain, the fight, I tell them no. Never. Not for 1 second. Because those 14 years with Robert were worth everything that came after. The love was real. The partnership was real. The life we built together was real, and no amount of hatred from his children could take that away from me. They tried to erase me from Robert's story. They tried to make me the villain, the gold digger, the manipulator, the murderer, but I'm still here. I'm still standing in the house we shared, tending the garden we planted, living the life we dreamed about, and that's the best revenge of all. Living well. I think about Robert every day. Some days it's sharp pain, grief so intense I can barely breathe. Other days it's soft nostalgia, sweet memories that make me smile. But always, always, I'm grateful. Grateful he chose me. Grateful he protected me. Grateful he loved me enough to make sure I'd be okay without him. Last week, I was at the grocery store when I saw Melissa. She was with her daughter. I didn't even know she had a daughter. Our eyes met across the produce section. She looked away first, took her daughter's hand and walked quickly to another aisle. I bought my groceries, drove home, and didn't think about her again until right now. Because that's the thing. She doesn't matter to my story anymore. None of them do. My story isn't about the people who tried to destroy me. It's about the woman who refused to be destroyed. This morning, I woke up in my bed, in my house, in my life. I made coffee exactly how Robert taught me. Strong enough to wake you up, smooth enough to enjoy. I sat on the patio and watched the sunrise over the garden, and I thought, I won. Not just the legal battles, not just the house, not just the money, I won my peace back. I won my dignity back. I won my right to grieve without being attacked. I won the chance to keep living after loss instead of being buried by it. Young women ask me for advice sometimes. Women facing their own battles with family members who think they're entitled to something that isn't theirs. I tell them, document everything. Every conversation, every threat, every dollar, every decision. Evidence is power. Get a good lawyer before you need one. Prevention is cheaper than cure. Don't be ashamed to ask for help. Strength isn't doing it alone. It's knowing when you need backup. Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. And most importantly, don't let anyone make you small. Don't apologize for surviving. Don't shrink yourself to make other people comfortable. Take up space. Demand respect. Fight for what's yours because you deserve it. Robert used to say that the best marriages are partnerships of equals. Not one person taking care of the other, but two people taking care of each other. That's what we had. That's what I'll always treasure, and that's what I pass forward now, to Emma, to the women at the foundation, to anyone who'll listen. You don't need someone else to complete you. But choosing someone to partner with, to build a life with, to face the hard stuff together, that's magic. And protecting that magic, even after it's gone, even when people try to destroy it, that's love. So yes, my stepson kicked me out of the mansion the night of the funeral. He tried to humiliate me, intimidate me, destroy me. But he failed, because he didn't understand what Robert and I had. He didn't understand that real love protects even beyond the grave. He didn't understand that you can't defeat someone who's already lost the worst thing that could happen to them. What did I have left to lose after Robert died? Nothing that mattered. So I fought with nothing to lose and everything to prove, and I won. This house isn't just mine because a court said so. It's mine because Robert wanted it to be. It's mine because I earned it, not through manipulation or tricks, but through 14 years of partnership, love, and mutual respect. Every room holds memories. Every corner has a story. Every window has seen our life together, and no one can take that from me. Not Brandon with his rage and his manufactured witnesses. Not Melissa with her rocks and her cameras. Not the podcasters or the gossipers, or the neighbors who turned their backs. None of them have the power to rewrite my history. I was there. I lived it. I know the truth, And that truth is simple. Robert Hayes loved Margaret Hayes. Margaret Hayes loved Robert Hayes. They built a life together. He made sure she'd be safe after he was gone, and she honored his memory by fighting for what they'd created together. The end, or rather the beginning, because I'm not done living yet. Next month, I'm going to Scotland. It's where Robert's family came from originally, and we'd always planned to go together. I'll go for both of us now. I'm taking Emma. She's never been. We'll trace the family history, visit the castles, drink the whiskey, take 1,000 pictures, and I'll tell her stories about her grandfather. The real stories, not the ones her father tried to sell. Stories about a man who loved fully, laughed easily, and protected fiercely. Stories about the kind of love that outlasts death. Stories about the kind of strength that comes from refusing to be a victim. And maybe, when we're sitting in some pub in the Highlands, raising a glass to Robert's memory, I'll tell her the most important story of all. That you can lose everything and still be okay. That grief and joy can coexist. That fighting for yourself isn't selfish, it's survival. That becoming a widow doesn't mean your story is over. That at 67, I'm not someone's wife anymore, or someone's stepmother, or someone's victim. I'm just Margaret, and Margaret is enough. I look at the photo on my mantle, Robert and me on our 10th anniversary, dancing in the kitchen, laughing at something one of us said. We look so happy, so completely, perfectly happy. We were, and nothing Brandon and Melissa did could take that happiness away. It existed. It was real. It mattered. I mattered to Robert, and he mattered to me. That's the story, not the drama. Not the courts. Not the restraining orders or the arrests or the vindication. Just love. Real, honest, imperfect, beautiful love. The kind that lasts. The kind that protects. The kind that makes you fight even when you're exhausted. The kind that makes you get up every morning and choose to keep living, even when the person you were living for is gone. That's the story I choose to tell. And as I sit here in my house, 5 years later, finally at peace, finally healed, finally ready for whatever comes next, I know Robert would be proud. I know he's watching, wherever he is, and smiling, and I know that the best revenge against people who tried to make me small wasn't winning in court. It was living large, taking up space, refusing to apologize for, surviving, and building something beautiful from the ashes of loss. So to every woman who's ever been called a gold digger when she was just someone who fell in love. To every widow who's been attacked by family members when she should have been supported. To every person who's ever been underestimated because of their age or their gender or their circumstances, stand up. Fight back. Document everything. Get help. Don't let them make you small, because you're stronger than they think, and you deserve your happy ending. Mine isn't perfect. I still miss Robert every day. I still have moments of grief that knock me flat. But I have my dignity. I have my peace. I have my home. I have my life. And after everything Brandon and Melissa put me through, after all the nights of fear and days of fighting, that feels like victory. No, scratch that. It is victory. Complete, total, undeniable victory. The kind you earn not by destroying your enemies, but by refusing to let them destroy you. The kind that makes you stronger, wiser, more compassionate. The kind that turns you into the woman who helps other women fight their own battles. The kind that makes you realize, they tried to kick me out of the mansion, but the mansion was never the point. The point was standing my ground, and I did. Epilogue. 3 years later, the Foundation Gala is held every year in November. We've raised over $2 million now. We've helped 127 people escape financial abuse by family members. Tonight, I'm giving the keynote speech. I stand at the podium, looking at the crowd. Emma is in the front row with her husband and their new baby, my honorary granddaughter, Roberta. Named after the grandfather she'll never meet but will definitely know through stories. Mrs. Chen is here. Uncle Frank's widow is here. Jennifer is here. Even Detective Morrison came, along with Thomas Brennan and his entire firm. My community. My tribe. My proof that family isn't about blood. It's about who shows up. I tap the microphone and begin. 8 years ago, I lost the love of my life. And in the worst moment of my grief, people who should have supported me tried to destroy me instead. I tell the story. Not all of it, we'd be here all night, but enough. The highlights. The lessons. The victory. When I finish, the room erupts in applause. But the best part comes after, when a woman in her 60s approaches me crying. My daughter-in-law is trying to say I'm incompetent so she can take my house. She whispers, I didn't know what to do. But hearing your story, I know now. I fight. Document. I get help. That's exactly right, I tell her, and I give her Thomas Brennan's card. You fight. And you win. Because that's the real ending of my story. Not that I kept my house. Not that Brandon went to jail. Not that justice was served. The real ending is that my pain became someone else's power. My fight became someone else's roadmap. My victory became proof that it's possible, and that more than anything is what Robert would have wanted. His love protecting not just me, but every woman who heard our story and found the courage to stand up for herself. Legacy isn't about what you leave behind. When you die, it's about what you inspire while you're still alive. Robert left me the house, but more than that, he left me an example of what it means to truly love someone, and I'm passing that forward. One widow at a time. One story at a time. One victory at a time. That's my happy ending. And I earned every single second of it.